Good morning.
This is my second time in 2 years at this conference. It's an honor to be here. I'm a little wired because my first speaking engagement was at 7:15 this morning. So forgive me if I, seem a little intense. But no, we're so glad to be here. And Peggy, it's so nice to be here with you. And thank you, Steve, for that wonderful introduction. So I think a theme today for this talk is going to be growth, certainly. Peggy is going to tell us all about how Whataburger is growing. And also, I may need some help in pronunciation. When I was growing up in Dallas, it was Whataburger. It was always Whataburger. I don't know if I see some heads nodding, right? And then it became Whataburger. And sometimes I hear Whataburger. But anyway, we'll maybe get your take on that in a little bit. But I think it's growth both for the organization and for the individual. And I think staying in touch with the individual's growth and fulfillment is just as important as staying in touch with customers' fulfillment and happiness. So let's talk a little bit about that growth. If you could just give us sort of a snapshot of where Whataburger is and what the opportunities you're facing right now, the challenges you're facing, and maybe through the prism of what you're working on right now, what you're thinking about, say, for when you go back to the office.
Wow. Okay. Lots of growth. By the way, those over there, sorry that you're way over there and blocked by the podium, but you do have a good view of Ross, right? Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be asked to be here. I just read something from Brene Brown that said, time is the greatest gift. And so thank you for the time that you're giving me this morning. Our growth, so we are at about 52,000. We call them family members. And we are growing. So this year and last year and the year prior, we opened between 50 and 75 locations a year. And that growth will continue. 50-ish of those are corporate locations, and then the remainder are franchise locations. We are primarily company-owned. And that means all of the hiring, all of the selection process, the development and everything is happening at a rapid pace. So everything we do, I have two people in my team up here. I'm going to call on them maybe at some point. But everything that we do is focused on scaling our culture. And that's hard to do. It's every person you hire. My belief is every single person you hire should concentrate your culture, never dilute it. And so that's our task, is looking at the growth that we have ahead of us, knowing, by the way, that in the next 5 years, when you incorporate turnover as part of the calculation, we'll probably hire about 8,300 managers, operating partners, leaders across the brand. Forget about team leaders and family members who are front and center at every one of our locations. So it's definitely a challenge. I think the biggest thing for us is to make sure that we have the right focus on who we bring through the doors. And my belief is you don't just open your door at your home for anybody who comes knocking, right? You're selective about who you let through your doors and into your home. And we feel the same way. I think it's really important that we continue to focus on that. And then as they come through the door, developing them and hiring them so that they can be a future leader and developing them in ways that enable them to be a future leader of our brand. We have to build benches in order for our brand to be scalable.
Well, let's talk about that, because I know that Whataburger has a robust sort of training and certification program. Talk about that. I just want to admit, my organization is much, much smaller. So I have about 160 people. But I think about this too. I think about growth too. I think about how do I stay in touch with that. And I'm sure there are, no matter what organization you're with, there are lessons you can draw from this sort of training and certification approach, which really helps you stay in touch with people and have those people that are ready to move up.
Sure. I'll start by saying the way that we set up our family member journey is, I think of it as how we set up our HR function. And that is that it starts with selection. We call it select you, welcome you, train you, develop you, and then there is support you and thank you. And all of those things are the things that circle around the center, which we call the heart of our family member journey is engagement. So every person on my team participates in one or more of those parts of the family member journey, and our goal is to ensure that every piece of that journey is welcoming, inviting, directed to that person's growth.
So I imagine in the select you phase, so every job description posted on Whataburger's website starts with the same question, and that is like to make people smile. So that's the first touch. That's the first impression that people have, And so I imagine, is it a involved process? Like how many stages are there in the interview process?
So I will say that for the family member who is hired to be your frontline hourly employee, they'll typically go through 1 or 2 interviews at the location. And we just try to ensure that our leadership at those locations knows what to look for. Never just to, fill shoes. It's about ensuring that anyone you add to your team is someone who could be a potential leader among the team someday. Do
you have markers? Are you saying hey, if they're not giving you a lot of personality, it's probably not going to work out? Yeah. What are you looking for?
What we're looking for is resilience, someone who's a team player, someone who gets a kick out of making somebody else's day. In fact, one of our mission is to make everyone's day a little better. And that sounds so incremental, doesn't it? And that was on purpose. It was intended to, don't make everybody's day the best day they've ever had, because that's kind of overwhelming and hard to do. But you can incrementally smile, say hello, say thank you, and it might change the course of someone's day. And so we look for people who get a kick out of. I'll tell you this, when we, as I started at Whataburger, I told the story of a former boss of mine who said, when you give a hug, you get a hug. So a lot of hugs are intended to make yourself feel better. And if you're hiring people who like to feel better because they made somebody happier, you win. I
really love the incremental idea. I worked at a magazine once, and we used to focus on, it was a men's magazine, we used to focus on the extra 10%. It was just 10%. Just improve this aspect, your health, your sense of style, just 10%. Yeah. That's something that's workable, that's doable, it's achievable. Each phase of this, do you need to be certified for each phase? Because I know certification is a part of it.
Yeah, so you asked me about certification. Let me go there for a second. So on the Train You course that we've created, that is intended to welcome people in the best way. So the day before a new hire starts, the person who's going to train them is supposed to call them, introduce themselves, and say, when you come in tomorrow, ask for me, because I'm the one who's going to train you. So you build that early connection. It feels hospitable. It might be the first job that person ever had, so you want to make sure that it's a great first employment experience, because that could set the stage, by the way, for the rest of their lives. And so when you bring them in, that first day, then they go through an orientation. We take them through we call it our flip book. And it just kind of takes them through our culture, the things that they need to know or ought to know and feel proud about on their first day.
Is this across the board, or is this for the sort of people in the restaurants?
It is mostly for the people that get hired in the restaurants. We do some version of that same orientation for everyone. But for our frontline, we call them our team members, but they're family members. Everyone's a family member at Whataburger. They go through this specifically. They have a roadmap for their first 5 shifts that they work that kind of check off. I've learned this, I've done this, I've learned this, I've done this. And then the certification that happens is we have 2 different certifications for our hourly team members. And one is your certification on hospitality. So all of the guest-facing moments, whether that's drive-through, whether that's the counter, whether that's curbside, all of those roles have a certification once you've gone through those stations and have learned and get signed off on those. That's certification 1. Certification 2 is for the production side. So all of the parts of the kitchen that you learn the fry station, you learn we call it our makeup table, you learn our expediter, we call it something else, but you learn all of those different roles, and that's your second certification. When you are fully certified, not only are you able to train anyone in the restaurant in any of those areas, but now you also have the next level where you can help us open locations. So we now can invite, we used to have 26, 28 people to help us open restaurants, and now we have like 5,300. So we've scaled that so that we can open restaurants at pace, and we never have to slow down because we don't have the people available to train.
Is there proportional growth happening on the sort of corporate level? Like, are you doing a lot? Are you doing like significantly more hiring at the corporate level than you were? Or are you sort of managing that with the team you have?
We try to manage that in a way, so if we're all doing a better job of how we are scaling for the business, we should also be scaling on how we are kind of hiring and fulfilling roles and aligning our corporate office to be able to support.
Tell me about the culture of the corporate office. You know, is there does it feel connected to what's happening, the Whataburger that I'm familiar with? You know, and
So
how does it connect?
It's a great question. I would say that the home office is it's a very supportive type of an environment. We know that we are there to help support and drive our business out in the field. And so we do a lot of, I'm gonna call on you, Jordan. We do a lot of things. We have we call it our Orange Culture Committee. And they do all kinds of events. We just did a football kickoff party, and everybody wears jerseys, and it's a fun, relaxed, decorate your cubicle, have a good time type of a setting. It feels good. Now, when you go into our locations, there's just something special when we go back into our kitchens and get to spend the time with our family members who make it happen out in the field. It's just a different experience. It all feels connected, but each location has its own personality, its own experience that you have when you go in there. And I would say our home office is very supportive of all of that.
Let's talk about you and your career for a moment. Why it seems like you've been drawn to companies that are experiencing growth. Mm-hmm. This, I have to imagine, is the most growth that you've sort of helped oversee, right? Oh, yeah. Why do you think you're drawn to that?
It's fun to build. It's fun to influence a culture by the way that you do things. And when I came to Whataburger, here's what I thought. I thought, big old company, right? Been around since 1950. I thought I would just have to kind of like pick up and walk along with it, right? Just kind of pick up my pace. But this growth is exponential based on what I've done in the past. In a prior hamburger chain I worked for, we got to the point where we were probably opening about 45 a year, maybe 40, I think was the most. And here we're doubling that sometimes. And so the growth is fun. It's fun to be a part of something that is growing, that you get to put your fingerprints all over, and in some cases scrap the old and build the new. And we've done a lot of that with my team. So I just find that the pace of it is energizing.
Well, let's say you want to scrap the old. Do you find, I don't imagine there's resistance to that because there's so many new things happening.
There's resistance.
Well, so talk about, I was trying to help you out.
I know. There's resistance.
But I appreciate your candor.
Yeah.
So how, so I work at an organization that's 52 years old, so basically the same.
Yeah.
Which is great. We should partner up on something. But there are people who've been there for a long time, a long time, and I value those people so much. We just had somebody retire who was there the entire 50 years.
Yep.
It's so important, but it can be tough, and there can be resistance and natural human resistance. So how do you navigate that? You haven't been at Whataburger too long, which is I think that's such a great time, right? Because you know all the people. You know the process. You're probably responsible for some of that, a lot of that process, But how do you kind of make new things happen?
Well, okay. First, I think it's important to say we do a really good job of honoring our legacy, right? We do so much to remind ourselves of the humility and the humble roots and just the beginnings that got us to where we are today. But we're also firm believers in the quote, "What got us here won't get us there." And so we are very much, as we bring people on, we talk about the legacy and we talk about the bridging that into the future. And I think that people, and by the way, your legacy folks care so much about the brand that you have to engage them in the discussions. Like, you have to involve them and engage them, ask their thoughts, bring them along. It's really, really important to get the momentum by getting folks who might have had their heels dug in a little bit deeper to pull their heels out a little bit and kind of help champion some of the causes.
People in your position often talk about a passionate fan base. I'm here to tell you, as an objective journalist, there actually is a passionate fan base of Whataburgers and Whataburger defenders and Whataburger enthusiasts. Tell me, we were just talking just a few minutes ago about a South by Southwest event. Talk about is it the Whataburger Museum?
Whataburger
it's like a
Museum
pop-up
of Art.
But I want you to talk about this because I think it's the Museum of Art.
Yes.
Beautiful. But I think the reason why I think this matters is because, the brand is so important with what you're doing when you're trying to hire people, when you're trying to, pull people into the organization, a relationship with the brand. But I just think this is such an interesting expression of that,
it's
of
crazy
that relationship.
Fun. I will tell you that the belovedness of our brand is what drew me to the opportunity. But it was kind of a grassroots type of a thing that happened where some artists started to do Whataburger artwork, paintings of hamburgers or the A-frame. And I mean, it's gone crazy. So if you go online and look up Whataburger Museum of Art, I think there's an Instagram page. But we at South by Southwest set up the museum. Otherwise, it's virtual. But everyone came, and all of these artists put their artwork up, and some of them were the little table tents. Like, you could pick a table tent and take a picture, and like there were all kinds of things, really creative. But who does that other than huge champions and fans of the brand? And so we wanted to highlight those people and thank them for the work that they do for us without our being, involved in it at all.
Just a request, don't lose the A-frame. As all of these people, have you noticed?
I know.
Everything's a box now. Everything's a box. Everything is the box.
I know.
Just don't lose the A.
We've lost the A-frame in some of our locations.
But
some
there's
of the
there's
newer,
always some,
there's some,
there's something.
and I will say that you will be happy when you see some of our future designs.
Okay, good to know. Well,
Assuming that the shopping centers and all of those places allow us to do what we want to do.
As a native Texan, it is one of the most iconic. And we did a story about travel to the moon. Texas companies are taking us to the moon on a cover of Texas Monthly. I don't know if you know this, but in the moonscape, we have a little
I've seen it.
Little lunar Whataburger, and that was not a paid thing. That was just us doing it. So Peggy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It's an honor to speak with you today. It's an honor to speak with you all, and thank you.
You bet.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.